Amnesty International report, even though they're talking about ECOWAS sanctions, not necessarily economic sanctions. But a meeting of this nature allows civil society groups, other actors, political party operatives to take stock of what's happening in the country, the continued repression, the disappearances, torture, and the climate of impunity, climate of fear in the country to forge the way ahead. And that's the primary purpose of this meeting here. And we hope at the end of this session, at the end of the day, we will come up with some specific recommendations for the international community, specific recommendations for activists, and hope by working together, by working on the same frequency, we would soon see an end to dictatorship in the country. Because definitely what is going on in the country is not sustainable. There is no way Yahya Jammeh could continue suppressing the people. The climate of fear is eroding so much that we do have a hope to end the dictatorship soon.
Thank you, Doctor. Question?
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. My name is Sini.
Il a déjà. Présentez-vous.
From Gynarco Radio. This is the diaspora, Gambian diaspora.
And your name is?
My name is Flexdown. Yes. It's a pleasure to be part of this. It's a pleasure to be part of this conference. But my main question is, Gambians in the diaspora have been voicing out disagreements about this conference, albeit maybe because of the time scales. What is your response to Gambians in the diaspora who are claiming that maybe this could have been a bit more inclusive? Mr. Jani.
Well, I'm not sure which Gambians I understand. I've been told a couple of online reporters were critical, but that's to be understood. There's no endeavor, human endeavor, you would engage in without being criticized. In fact, we're fighting to have a climate in the Gambia where people can express themselves, criticize. You don't think you have a monopoly of anything, you don't have the ultimate truth. But this exercise has been very fruitful. We've been able to bring together party leaders, representatives of various civil society groups, women, youth, people coming from the United States, from elsewhere in Africa, from Europe, to deliberate, to talk about finding a framework, finding common ground to address our political situation. And there's no way you can invite and arrange to bring the entire diaspora to this event. So therefore, those criticisms are to be expected, and we welcome those. If they're constructive, we take them into stock for our next event. Otherwise, we move on. And I think that's my response.
Thank you very much. My name is Sini Marana. I work with Diasporium News and also a stranger for some newspapers outside. Thank you very much. My question goes to Amnesty International. Amnesty has been focusing on the Gambia for quite a while, and recent report, Dangerous to Discern Human Rights Under Threat in the Gambia, is the latest. I just want to know, apart from the threats coming from Yahya Jammeh, what do you think the impact of this report back home? Because we have seen Jammeh said Amnesty and United Nations should go to hell. So coming up with this report again, what impact do you think this will have on Gambia in the international? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, what we hope from this report is that it exposes very, very clearly the patterns of violations, at least over the last 5 years, and that no one would be able to deny that a well-researched, a rigorous report, that there are civil society, journalists and opponents who are threatened and who cannot express themselves properly in Gambia. Now, of course, as I said in the presentation, many of that people know. People are aware of that. Sometimes people aren't aware of the scale of that, the severity of that. 87 people still in detention from protests a few months ago is quite severe. An imam who's been in prison for 8 months because he presented a petition is quite severe. Not everyone is aware of that. So we want to, first of all, make sure that no one can say they do not know. No one, whether it's an African Union, ECOWAS, European Union, the United States, can say they do not know there is repression in Gambia. So that's very much the first thing. We give the facts out there. The second thing we want to try and show is that, of course, there are things that the Gambian authorities can do. They can release prisoners. They can choose to change laws. They can choose to respect the ECOWAS Court of Justice. We've, of course, made those recommendations before. We'll keep making them. The Gambian authorities may or may not follow them. If the Gambian authorities, well, I think what is new with what we're trying to say, if the Gambian authorities do not follow that, there are big actions and there should be consequences. But Gambia is a member of ECOWAS. It has signed treaties as a member of ECOWAS. It's signed the ECOWAS treaty. It's signed the protocol on democracy on good government. And in those treaties, there are sanctions available to ECOWAS to take if a state does not follow those obligations. And so I guess what we're saying for the first time, it's not enough just to keep doing dialogue in private. It's not enough just to keep demanding change. At some point, ECOWAS has to take itself seriously as an organisation. It has to look at Gambia. First, it can engage in Gambia and ask for change and say, look, you need to do this. But if nothing changes, then there has to be some consequences. And so I would very much hope that the other heads of state of ECOWAS who meet this week will take this seriously, will open an investigation, will demand for change, and if they do not, would be prepared to take sanctions on Gambia.
Macky Sall, sorry, just a follow-up question. Macky Sall is the current chairman of the ECOWAS head of state, and then Saturday ECOWAS head of state will gather in Dakar here to discuss on a wide range of issues, including the peace and security in the sub-region. Do Amnesty International and right groups pressurize President Macky Sall to act on the Gambia? Because Gambians back home feel that ECOWAS is not doing enough to ensure that respect for human rights, respect for democracy prevail in the Gambia. What is Amnesty doing to ensure that Macky Sall, who is the chair of the ECOWAS, to act on the right abuses currently taking place in the Gambia? Thank you.
So it's a good question. Macky Sall President Sall has a very important role to play as president of ECOWAS. Last week, our director Alioune Tine and also our Secretary General from Salil Shetty, who heads up the entire movement, met Macky Sall, met President Sall in Dakar last week, and one of the key issues that were raised was to try and make sure that ECOWAS take a stronger action on Gambia. So we know and we recognise and we've called for that action. It's important for President Sall to do that, but it's of course not just his responsibility. It's a responsibility of the leaders from all of the states in ECOWAS. I think that's really important to know. We can't just say it's one country's responsibility, it's a community responsibility. So it's good to, in the discussions we've had, it's important that Nigeria plays a key role in that. It's important that Ivory Coast or Niger or other names of the community also take the responsibility, because what happens in Gambia will also already does have an impact on how ECOWAS functions.
It's okay?
She want to respond.
Quickly, madam.
I would like to also call on Nigeria, our brother President Buhari, to play the role that Nigeria has always played, not only in the sub-region but in Africa. I would also like to make a word of caution about sanctions. We have seen the implications of sanctions. Gambia is already in a bad state. So I would rather recommend, and that is the feeling and the spirit of the Gambian people, targeted sanctions. That is like banning him from traveling here and his entourage, freezing his assets, and otherwise, if we continue to sanction and then he will be excluded, like he has unilaterally removed us from the Commonwealth. If ECOWAS removes Gambia from ECOWAS and also other organizations, what the implications would be that we will be secluded and we will not have anybody to accompany us in our struggle. Thank you.
Thank you, Madame Dominique. Oui, présentez-vous et posez votre question. Peut-être que ce serait la toute dernière question. S'il n'y en a pas encore, s'il y a les interviews, allez-y.
Voilà, merci à tout le monde. J'avais juste une préoccupation. Demander si est-ce qu'on ne va pas... je m'appelle Paul, je suis journaliste à la radio.
Moi, je sais que vous êtes coach.
Absolument. Donc ma préoccupation était de savoir, est-ce que nous n'allons pas de plus en plus vers la nécessité de trouver une chambre pénale africaine afin de pencher sur ces faits qui sont commis généralement en Afrique. On a vu le cas du Tchad avec la condamnation récente de Sénapré, mais pour le cas aussi de la Gambie, on va de plus en plus vers ça. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas temps en tout cas de commencer à mettre, parce que voilà, que les chambres qui avaient été mises en place pour le cas après ont été dissoutes, vont disparaître en tout cas. Est-ce qu'on peut s'attendre à ça?
Merci.
We hope he's tried in the Gambia.
Someone has a mic?
Quelqu'un a allumé.
Est-ce que quelqu'un a allumé le mic?
Oh,
Nice.
all right.
Anyway. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, mine was brief. Somebody else could respond. I was just saying I hope we try him in the Gambia first. Abre was already out. I assume that's why he went through. If he was caught in Chad, I don't think it would get to this point. So we are hoping Jammeh gets tried in the Gambia, and that way we could show him what an independent judicial system looks like. It's not going to be anything like the mercenary system we have there, and where retribution and simply extrajudicial killings and so on dominate. So I hope the day comes when he could be tried in under an independent judicial system in the Gambia, rather than resorting to regional courts.
Thank you. Fatou,
Oui, moi je pense que ce qui se passe en Gambie peut être réglé dans le cadre des mécanismes qui existent. Maintenant, nous savons qu'il y a l'impunité et l'absence de coopération de la Gambie manifeste par rapport à toutes les institutions. Il y a eu des décisions sur la Gambie à travers les mécanismes africains, que ce soit la CEDEAO, la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples, et au niveau des Nations Unies. Maintenant, qu'est-ce qui reste à faire? C'est de contraindre la Gambie, comme l'a dit tout à l'heure mon collègue, de contraindre la Gambie à respecter ses engagements et de le faire. Et c'est cette volonté politique qu'on demande aux institutions africaines, la CEDEAO et l'Union africaine. Et l'une des premières mesures, c'est de contraindre la Gambie à respecter le principe qui régit dans la charte africaine et qui fait que la Gambie abrite la Commission africaine. C'est une aberration aujourd'hui que la Commission africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples, le principal organe des droits humains, soit basé en Gambie, et que la Gambie ne respecte pas les décisions de cette même commission. Aujourd'hui, depuis que Yahya Jammeh est au pouvoir, la Gambie n'a pas soumis de rapport. Ça fait au moins 11 rapports que la Gambie n'a pas soumis. C'est l'impunité. Toutes les missions de cette commission ont été interdites. Aujourd'hui, cette commission a demandé à la Gambie de faire une mission d'établissement des faits de toutes ces atrocités qui sont commises. La Gambie a refusé. C'est une commission de l'Union africaine. Si l'Union africaine ne peut pas prendre la décision politique, vous savez, il serait difficile d'établir des chambres plus tard. Et je pense qu'il ne faut pas faire médecin après la mort. C'est maintenant qu'il faut agir. Il faut que cette commission soit révisitée, sa condition d'établissement en Gambie révisitée pour que la Gambie puisse soit respectée, pour que la commission déloge cette commission de la Gambie. Et il faut que les autres États africains aussi soient prêts à abriter. Nous demandons au Sénégal, au Nigeria, à tous ces pays d'inviter la commission à faire des sessions en attendant. On peut boycotter la commission africaine, qu'elle ne puisse plus avoir des sessions de droits humains. La Gambie ne peut pas avoir la légitimité d'être la capitale des droits humains. Pour chaque 6 mois, on discute des droits humains en Afrique, en Gambie, et on ne parle pas de la Gambie, c'est inadmissible. Il faut que les États africains se disent, même si on ne peut pas enlever la commission aujourd'hui, nous allons inviter cette commission à venir chez nous le temps que l'Union africaine règle cette question politique qui est perturbante. Et c'est une honte pour l'Afrique, il faut le dire, il faut que cette situation soit réglée et nous espérons que le sommet de la CEDEAO aussi en parlera.
Merci. Une toute dernière question avec Abdoulaye John, et puis on va passer aux interviews en français et en anglais.
Well, Abdoulaye John, I have a question.
The mic? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, it is for the director, Dr. Jani. You know, it seems that all options have been exhausted over this past year. And Jami continues to be defiant. Are you exploring ways and some avenue to engage ECOWAS and other institutions to exercise the responsibility to protect?
Well, I can say many options have been explored, but not exhausted. As you rightly know, we have engaged the UN, the Human Rights Commission, particularly made submissions as part of the Universal Periodic Review process. We have engaged the European Union, particularly through members of the European Parliament and also the European External Action Service. We've engaged foreign governments, U.S. State Department, gone everywhere, engaged in protests, written, made submissions everywhere. But it has not, we've not exhausted all of the options. As many have already, some have mentioned, we need at least targeted sanctions. We need to push for targeted sanctions, for instance, travel ban, assets freezes, and ECOWAS also imposing some of the sanctions that are available to it under its protocols. So these are all things that we can still do. Get Nigeria, Senegal to play more prominent role in the fight for democracy in the Gambia, fight for the protection of human rights in the Gambia, knowing that instability in the Gambia would affect all of them. Yahya Jammeh is a regional menace, and therefore a regional approach, a more aggressive approach is necessary. And I think that is something we ought to be doing now, particularly as we mentioned, engaging ECOWAS.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Dr. Jani. Je voulais vous remercier. Il y a des possibilités de faire des interviews en français, en anglais et en wolof.
On peut les faire dehors, par contre?